Today's scripture is from John, chapter 11, verses 1 through 44, reading voice. There was a certain man who was very ill. He was known as Lazarus from Bethany, which is the hometown of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary did a beautiful thing for Jesus. She anointed the Lord with pleasant-smelling oil and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother, Lazarus, became deathly ill, as the sisters immediately sent a message to Jesus, which said, "Lord, the one you love is very ill." Jesus heard the message. Jesus said, "His sickness will not end in his death, but will bring great glory to God. As these events unfold, the Son of God will be exalted." Jesus clearly loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. However, after receiving this news, he waited 2 more days before he was leaving. Jesus, speaking to his disciples, said, "It is time to return to Judea." The disciples said, "Teacher, the last time we were there, some Jews attempted to execute you by crushing you with stones. Why would you go back?" Jesus said, "There are 12 hours of daylight, correct? If anyone walks in the day, the person does not stumble because he or she sees the light of the world. If anyone walks at night, he will trip and fall because he does not have the light within." Jesus briefly pauses. "Our friend Lazarus has gone to sleep, so I will go awaken him." The disciples said, "Lord, if he is sleeping, then he is surely all right." Jesus used the word sleep as a metaphor for death, but the disciples took him literally and did not understand. Then Jesus spoke plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and I am grateful for your sake that I was not there when he died. Now you will see and believe. Gather yourselves and let's go to him." Thomas the twin said, "Let's go so we can die with him." As Jesus was approaching Bethany, which is about 2 miles east of Jerusalem, he heard that Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. Now many people had come to comfort Mary and Martha as they mourned the loss of her brother. Martha went to meet Jesus when word arrived that he was approaching Bethany, but Mary stayed behind at the house. Martha said, "Lord, if you had been with us, my brother would not have died. Even so, I believe that anything you ask of God will be done." Jesus said, "Your brother will rise to life." Martha, "I know he will rise again when everyone is resurrected on the last day." Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the source of all life. Those who believe in me will live even in death. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never truly die." Do you believe that? Martha said, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the anointed, the liberating King, God's own Son, who we have heard is coming into the world." After that, Martha ran home to Mary. Martha whispering to Mary, "Come with me. The teacher is here and he has asked for you." Mary did not waste a minute. She got up and went to the same spot Martha had found Jesus outside the village. The people gathered in her home, offering her support and comfort, assumed that she was running back to the tomb to cry and mourn, so they followed her. Mary approached Jesus, saw him, and fell at his feet. Mary said, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would still be alive." When Jesus saw Mary's profound grief and the moaning and weeping of her companions, he was deeply moved by their pain in his spirit and was intensely troubled. Jesus, where have you laid his body? Come and see, Lord. As they walked, Jesus wept, and everyone noticed how much Jesus must have loved Lazarus. But others were very skeptical. The others said, if this man can give sight to the blind, he could have kept him from dying. Then Jesus, who was intensely troubled by all of this, approached the tomb, a small cave covered by a massive rock. Jesus said, remove the stone. Martha said, Lord, he has been dead for 4 days. The stench will be unbelievable. Jesus said, remember, I told you, if you believe, you will see the glory of God. They removed the stone, and Jesus lifted his eyes towards heaven. Jesus said, Father, I am grateful that you have heard me. I know that you are always listening, but I proclaim it loudly so that everyone here will believe you have sent me. After these words, he called out in a thunderous voice, Lazarus, come out! Then the man who was dead walked out of his tomb, bound from the head to the toe in a burial shroud. Jesus said, untie him, let him go. May God add blessing to reading, hearing, and living of these words.
Amen. Have you ever been mistaken for somebody else? I feel like this is a thing that happens a lot in TV shows or movies, right? Like, in fact, we were just watching something this week where, the point of view camera, you're walking up behind somebody, and all you see is the back of their head, and the person taps them on the shoulder, and they turn around, and, oh, whoops, sorry, you're not who I was looking for. And this is a thing that happens a lot. I don't know if it happens so much in real life, but, occasionally, I've got to think, at some point, you did something like that, or you've been mistaken for somebody else. Maybe even a celebrity. That's always fun, right? Our son Josh is going to graduate high school in 2 weeks, but many years ago when he was in first grade, he was one of not 2, not 3, but 4 Joshuas in his first grade classroom. Now one of them was Josh N, and one was Josh T, but then the other 2, ours and the other one, were both Josh B's. So what do you do? Well, fortunately, the other Josh B had a shorter last name, so he became known as Josh Bezic, like his full name. And our son was Josh B. Everybody called him Josh B. It was always Josh B. This got ingrained in him. Even if there weren't other Joshes around, his friends would say, hey, Josh B, come play, or whatever. So much so that, that would have been like August when school started. So much so, calendar turns around to May, it's Mother's Day. In first grade, Joshua is making a little Mother's Day card, and he signs it, Happy Mother's Day, love, Josh B. Like, oh, buddy, that's sweet, but yeah, we know which Josh you are. But that's how ingrained it became in him that he was Josh B. I was thinking about that this week because we have the story with Mary and Martha, and when we read through the Gospels, sometimes it's easy for the stories to from different Gospels to kind of mix together. And the truth is, there's a whole lot of Marys that get named throughout the stories. Right? There's Mary, the mother of Jesus. You might have heard of her. There's Mary that we call Magdalene, right? And then the Gospels also have, even just as who showed up at the tomb for Jesus, Mary, the mother of Joseph, or Mary, the mother of James, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, Mary, the mother of Joseph, and then, my favorite, the other Mary. Can you imagine being that person in history? Like, all these other people at least get a little less designation, but the text really says, well, there was this Mary and that Mary and the other Mary. But here in the Gospel of John, as we read a few weeks ago, it's Mary Magdalene that specifically gets named as the one who stays at the cross, who's there at the tomb, who goes to the empty tomb. Even if the other disciples come and then they leave, they see the tomb's empty and they don't know what to do, so they run away. Mary Magdalene stays, the Gospel of John says. And she's the one that has that encounter with Jesus. She's the one that gets sent to be the first Easter preacher and tell the other disciples. That's in the Gospel of John. Now, the story that we just read, it's a story about a man named Lazarus who had two sisters of his own. They were named Mary and Martha, and they were all... Okay, that's but you might... So Mary, this story, we got Lazarus and Mary and Martha, and it might remind you of a different story from the Gospel of Luke. That's a favorite one, because that's the one where Martha and Mary are sisters, and Jesus is coming to visit. And Martha complains because she's doing all the work. She's cleaning the house. She's getting the dinner ready. She's preparing for Jesus to come. And what is Mary doing? Just sitting and listening to Jesus. How many of you have a sibling? I'm an only child. How many of you have a sibling? Have you ever had to complain about that sibling not doing their fair share of the work? Then you know this story, and maybe you even love this story. In fact, on Mother's Day, maybe this is the story you should be reading, right? It just tees itself up for Mother's Day. That siblings that are complaining because one of them's doing all the work. This story's so ingrained in my family. So my grandparents were very faithful people, and when we would visit them, when I was a kid and we would visit them in Lincoln, Nebraska, I noticed this thing a few different times that over the years, a few times if my grandpa thought that my grandma was, I don't know, focusing in on some minutia that he thought was just maybe not so necessary, he would look at her and say, "Well, hello, Martha." And that was their little way to indicate that, yeah, dear, you're kind of, maybe let that go, whatever it is that you're so worried about. That's a fun and wonderful story. But that's not this story. Okay, it's easy to get them conflated because they both have Mary and Martha, but here's the thing. That story in Luke, it starts with this. Oh, Jesus went to a certain village. Now, why doesn't Luke name what that village is? Is it redacted? Did he not know? Is he making it up? Is it a compilation of stories? We don't know. It always annoys me when the gospel writers don't answer the same questions that I have. Right? When they're not interested in the same questions I'm interested in. The story in John today happens in Bethany. The story Luke didn't give it a place. And notice who's missing in that story from Luke? There's no Lazarus. Okay? These are different stories. We'll establish that. The story we read today, Lazarus, happens in Bethany, has Lazarus and Mary and Martha. Except there's some weirdness going on in this text. And I'm aware of all of this because of the work that Dr. Diana Butler-Bass has written about and shared the story of her friend, Dr. Elizabeth Schrader-Pulitzer. They've done amazing academic work to bring what I'm going to share with you to light, but all of the real work is theirs. I'm just sharing it. But friends, if you've ever felt silenced by the church, women especially, but everybody, if you've ever felt silenced by the church, if you've ever felt neglected by the church, if you've ever felt like your good work has been ignored, or someone else has taken credit for it, then this story is for you. So friends, I invite you to embark with me to a journey into mystery as we investigate the mysterious case of the missing Mary. We're going to start with verse 1. Do you remember, how did verse 1 read? Well, you can look at it, or guess what? We've got it for you right here. How did verse 1, what we read, how did that go? Well, in the version we read, the voice, which I like the voice because it's written like a screenplay. That's why you see the speakers, the name of the speaker off to the side like that. It's written in screenplay style. There was a certain man who was very ill. He was known as Lazarus from Bethany. And then that last little bit is a clause describing Bethany. Bethany is the hometown of Mary and her sister Martha. That's the version we read. Other versions, like the NRSV, will have, there was a certain sick man, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and of Martha, her sister. What's the big deal? Seems normal, right? And yes, it does, except Dr. Schrader-Pulzer was doing her work investigating this Gospel of John. And because of modern technology, we're able to, there are manuscripts for the text that they're written copies that we have that survive for centuries. And they're, of course, encased in glass and kept in secret places, and not secret places, but in safe places. But they've been digitized, so she's able to look at them, and she was taking a look, and she noticed on this one manuscript called Papyrus 66, not to be confused with Order 66, that was a different thing. The Gospel of John, in this oldest manuscript that we have, reads like this. There was a certain sick man, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and of Mary, his sister. Okay, that's a tortured sentence in English. It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. But she looked at it further, and man, you remember when we used to have to take tests, and we'd have those little notebooks with the blue cover? Right? I couldn't find one of those in the stuff that I've kept over the years. But I did have a paper where I had this small little bit, and I had to write on it. And I noticed that, oh my gosh, here's the part where I scratched out and wrote in something a little above it, or here's a part where I underlined something, or even looking at professors' notes. Oh my gosh, this is really bad. Oh, I scratched this part out. You can't miss it, right? I scratched that part out. Or even the professor making their comments scratched a little bit out, right? You can't miss it. Here, you guys get to see it at home, right? You can't miss it. You can't hide it. It's just part of what we had to do when we were handwriting everything. All of our old manuscripts, of course, are handwritten. Here's a picture of what that Papyrus 66 looks like. A scribe came in and wrote above. See where the circle is on the right side there? It's in Greek, so, it's literally Greek to me. But that letter is called theta. It's in the circle there. See how they wrote it above? It's not subtle. The scribe was going along and realized, wait, I need to change this. If you look at the last 5 letters on the right, you can see something that kind of looks like an M, kind of looks like an A, kind of looks like a P. So that's how you write R in Greek. And then it used to be an I, and now there's essentially a T. It used to say Mary. It was changed to say Martha. And she thought, wait, what? What's going on here? And so she looked at other texts, other manuscripts that would illuminate what's going on here. So we'll take a look at another one. This is the 5th oldest manuscript that we have. And that very same verse reads like this. There was a certain sick man, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary, his sister. And Dr. Schrader, she started to look at these, and she looked at hundreds of manuscripts and found that 1 in 5 had something weird going on like this around Mary and Martha. Now, anybody still make grocery lists? Do you still handwrite a grocery list? I do that. When you're writing, do you ever find yourself oh gosh, I wrote the wrong thing. I don't want to use a whole new space. I'm just going to write on top of what I wrote. You ever do that? You ever write on top of what you're going to write? And somehow you think you're going to read it. You ever get to the grocery store and be like, I have no idea what this says anymore. Right? Or you ever write something, you have an L, and you decide it needs to be a T, so you just cross the L and turn it into a T. Take a look at the manuscript here. Now, the person that created this image has gone over it with red so you can see it a little better. But see how the bottom line there, it's been written over. At some point, somebody's like, oh yeah, we need to write something different there. And just like we might, if we had an L, you might decide it needs to be a T and just cross the L. In Greek, the end of the word for Mary looks like an I to us. If you just circle that and cross it, it becomes the T. Over and over and over again, Dr. Schrader found this kind of thing was happening. 1 in 5 manuscripts had something weird like this going on. Why? Why would we do this? What's going on? Why And she found that not just Mary changed to Martha in a few ways, but pronouns were changed. So they described her having a sister as opposed to Lazarus having a sister. Like, instead of there being one sister, it was changed to multiple sisters. There's this whole mystery going on about who's this describing. You might say that Dr. Schrader discovered some deleted scenes in the manuscripts. And here's what she found. When she put them together, when you compile the deleted scenes, that first part of John reads like this. There was a certain sick man, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary, his sister. Now this was the Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment, who wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore Mary sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, the one you love is sick. When Jesus heard this, he said to her, the sickness is not unto death, but the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Lazarus and his sister singular. Are you with me? Do you see what's going on here? Are you curious? Why would this be? What is the point of all this? Do you see how this flows a little more sensibly than that first version that we saw? It's likely that even as late as the 2nd century, this version was floating around. In fact, better have one more slide. In the year 210, there's an early church father named Tertullian. He wrote this. Mary, confessing him, Jesus, to be the Son of God. He wrote that in. Now, wait a minute. Mary confessing Jesus. Look, take a look. Take a look at verse 27. It's at the top of the 6th page. Who's speaking, according to the version that we have? Martha. As late as the 2nd century, early church, and let me tell you, we've had to read some Tertullian stuff. He's not a big fan of women. Like, he wouldn't be saying this was Mary if he didn't have to. Somewhere along the line, this great confession, this line that we have Martha saying in verse 27, read that with me. Verse 27, read that with me. Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the anointed, the liberating King, God's own Son, who we have heard is coming into the world. That's the thesis of the Gospel of John. That's John's biggest statement. That's what John is leading up to. This declaration that Jesus is the liberating King. And somewhere along the line, somebody essentially split Mary in two, made her Mary and Martha, and put these words in Martha's mouth. What is going on here? Well, I want to remind you that, even though we know better, even though we know it's not how it went, I think, in my years, I've always found that we have a tendency to think, even when we know better, or talk about the Bible as if it just fell out of the air from God. Right? And I blame Charlton Heston. Right? Because all those years ago, in that baby series, right, he goes up on the mountain, he comes down, and all of a sudden he's just got these 2 tablets. As if God literally wrote them. But of course, the texts were written by people. And how we got them over the years is people would handwrite them. Scribes would handwrite them, and probably they would have, well, here's the one manuscript, and here's another one, and I'm copying them. And what do you do when one says something and one says something else? Well, the scribe makes a choice. And somewhere along the line, they chose to insert Martha to this story. Now again, if you're a lover of that Martha and Mary thing where they're fighting siblings, you get to keep that story. This has nothing to do with this story. In fact, it kind of seems like somebody took that Martha and inserted her in this part of the story. Why might you do that? Now, this is speculation, but think about it. If, as we've already said, if Mary Magdalene, and don't get it twisted, that whole thing about Mary Magdalene being a prostitute didn't come around until the 6th century when Pope Gregory the Great offered that as an idea. So this is long before that. In John's Gospel, in the earliest manuscripts, we have Mary, as we read, as the one who anoints Jesus with oil and with her hair. Mary is the one that serves Jesus dinner in the story that we read. Mary is the one that's explicitly named as going to the cross, as being there, as receiving that first vision of the resurrection of Jesus. And Mary is the one who is sent to tell the story, to be that first Easter preacher, to preach the gospel that Jesus is risen. And she's the one that makes this great confession. You have one person doing all those things. You know what we call those? Main characters. And I'm convinced by Dr. Pulser's work that this woman, Mary, as a main character was just a little too much for the patriarchs of our faith back in the day. And so they split her in two and put this great confession in the words of a character that you can't even hardly, that's unmemorable. Now we've also heard this confession in the other Gospels. We hear this confession out of whom? Who's the one that turns to Jesus and says, you're the Son of God? Peter, right? We're used to Peter. And what does Jesus respond to Peter when he says that? Oh, Peter, you're the rock on whom I will build my church. You're the rock. Friends, Dr. Pulser, and she has taken this hypothesis to the highest level. She's gone to the Harvard Biblical Review, and they published her stuff. She didn't even finish her doctorate yet, and she got published by the Harvard Bible Review. That's not supposed to happen. She went to Germany. Oh my gosh. She went to the, blah, blah, blah Bible Society in Germany. It's basically like the hoity-toity, like if you, close your eyes and picture the most stereotypical room full of old white men gatekeepers that you can imagine. And that's what this group in Germany is. And she presented for them, and they went, "To the Lord!" Wait, no, they said, no, we're German, we don't say that. They said, "Mein Gott, was ist dies?" And instead of being the gatekeepers we expected them to be, they listened. And they examined her evidence. And they said, "Oh my goodness, this changes things." And more recently published Bibles have in the commentary section, if you get an annotated Bible, you can find ones with the commentary that talks about this idea. That Martha has been through, that Mary was divided into two, and Martha was kind of created in this space, and that this confession, this thesis of the Gospel of John, was probably uttered by Mary Magdalene. One last thing. We're going to find our missing Mary. Just like, you know how we tend to say Jesus Christ and think of Christ as Jesus' last name, but we know actually that's a title. It's Jesus the Christ, the Anointed, the Liberating King, right? It's a title. Same with Magdalene. We're so used to hearing or reading Mary Magdalene, it sounds like it's her last name, but it's not. And so then often we say, well, that's because she's from a place called Magdala, except she's not. As long ago as the 5th century, early church father St. Jerome wrote this, and Mary, properly the Magdalene, who because of diligence and ardent faith received the name of the Tower, deserved to see the risen Christ before the apostles. This isn't just something Dr. Pulser made up. For centuries, we've seen this. Magdala is a word that means tower. Friends, I'm convinced that from the beginning we've meant to have had a faith with two exemplars. Peter the rock and Mary the tower. Both confessing the truth about who Jesus is. Peter the rock we know. Mary the tower has been kept from us. And we're just now seeing that she existed, that she exerted influence on the early church. that our early church fathers knew of her. There has meant to be a father and a mother of our faith in that way. Just like Peter, we could have had Mary at the tower teaching us all along. And that, friends, is a great example to me of why we say one of our core values in this place is to be lifelong learners. Because even when we think we've heard everything there is to hear, there's more to learn. There's always more. And again, if you've ever felt erased, if you've ever felt forgotten, this story, this text, this Jesus is for you. If you've ever felt ignored or oppressed or repressed, this story, this text, this Jesus is for you. So let's take our cue from Dr. Pulitzer. And Bishop Malone, Tracy Malone. Let's imagine a church in which nobody is marginalized. Let's imagine a church that transcends geography and cultures and languages and borders and barriers and differences. I'm talking about, she says, a beautiful mosaic that reflects the kingdom of God. Let's imagine, Bishop Malone says, let's imagine a church that is beautifully diverse, intrinsically connected to love each other, intrinsically connected as we go forth to serve our neighbors near and far. Let us reimagine church. I'll add with both Peter the Rock and Mary the Tower, that no matter who you are, no matter who your parents were, no matter whom you love, Jesus says you are God's beloved. Let us be inspired by the faith, not just of Peter, but of Mary the Tower, to live lives of love. That's how we solve the mystery of the missing Mary, to live lives of love, knowing we are God's beloved children. Amen?
Amen. May it be so.